Welcome to MSPTDA video number 12. Hey, we're talking about Power Query and Power BI Desktop and the amazing using locale feature. Now, here's the fundamental problem. If we get a file from the United States where date and sales are formatted a particular way, and then another file from France where the dates and sales are not formatted the same way. How do we import all of these text files and append into a single table? And if we go over to our topics, here's our topics. And this is going to be our final video specifically about Power Query. And we're going to see all these amazing topics as they relate to using locale. And then we'll see our culminating example where we'll import text files from different parts of the world and append. And we'll get to see the from folder feature, the merge feature, build a custom function, and append. And this very clever solution comes from our favorite Power Query master, Bill Sizes. Now, we're actually going to see that the regional settings and using locale, those are the two ways we're going to influence dates and numbers. Those features exist both in Excel Power Query and Power BI Desktop. Now, again, the fundamental problem is we have dates and sales coming in from a text file from different countries. So here, 28/1/2018, that's not going to be interpreted correctly in a US system, whereas in a French system, this date would not be interpreted correctly. Also for numbers, a comma tells us that these are pennies. A decimal over here says that these are pennies. But no problem. We can resolve this issue using either regional settings or using locale. Now, here's Power Query. And when we bring something into Power Query, whatever is in the control panel, regional settings, under location, this is going to determine the location, and this is going to determine the format. All of those computer-wide settings are automatically brought into Power Query. Now, you can actually override those settings, and this is example 4 I'm going to start off with. If your goal is to always have imported text files interpreted differently than the control panel regional settings, then you go up to Get Data, down to Query Options. In the Query Options dialog box, you choose Regional Settings, and here's the option. If I were to choose French, this option right here, that means all text files that I import into Power Query would be interpreted as coming from this location. So for this file, if I were to import lots of text files in this format, that might be a smart setting. But if I only occasionally do it, then there's another easier way to do it. Again, if I have this on my computer in the United States, if I start to import lots of text files, this will be interpreted as text, not as date and sales. Now, I do want to show you over in Power BI Desktop, the file path is slightly different. We have to go to File, Options and Settings, Options. Here's the Options dialog box, Regional Settings. And the actual message here is much more polite than over in Excel. Locale determines the regional settings used to interpret numbers, dates, and times in imported text files for this file. So just for this Power BI Desktop file, if I were to change it to France, that's how text files would be interpreted. So the first way that we can change locale is Query Options, Regional Settings. And this is for all text file imports for the current file only. The more common way to change locale and region so we can interpret dates and numbers correctly is to use the data type icon at the top of the date column, and then the Using Locale option. And this changes just that particular column. Let's go over to EX1 to 4. Here's our data set. Here's MMDDYY dates. Here's dates that are being interpreted on my US system incorrectly. DDMMYY, ISO dates. This is not going to be solved with regional settings, but while we're talking about dates, I'm going to show you how easy it is to convert these to dates. And then we have regular numbers that work in this regional setting and ones that do not. No problem. Both of these can be solved with using locale, and this one we can change the data type twice and get proper dates from ISO dates. All right, this is already an Excel table. I click in a single cell, data ribbon tab, get and transform, and the from table. Or we can use the keyboard Alt-APT. Here's the Power Query Editor. I'm going to rename this. Something like get all dates and numbers working. Now we have a source and a change type. I can already see it change this. Hey, I'm going to just do regular data type and choose date. All of these data types are available, but look at this down at the bottom. We're not going to use that one yet, just date. Now it's going to ask me if I want to replace. I do, so I'm going to click replace. All right, so we have our dates there. Here's how easy it is to convert these to dates. Data type icon using locale. I definitely want the data type as a date, and now I simply say where these are from. And there it is, French. It gives us a sample right here. When I click OK, now these are interpreted correctly. The numbers are correct, but these are from France. So we can go to data type using locale. I want this as a decimal number from France. There's our change type with locale settings. There's the preview. Click OK. So using locale, very important to get our numbers and dates interpreted correctly. Now this ISO date, they happen to come in as numbers. So that means we have a two-step process. If they came in as text, then we could simply use date and they would be interpreted correctly. Well, step one, we want to convert them to text. So I'm going to say text. Now notice, change type 1. If I come back up here, click the icon and say date, it's going to be polite. Do I want to replace? I do not want to replace, because if I replace it, then they won't be text anymore, and the date format won't convert ISO to a proper date. So I say add a new step. And just like that, we have our correct dates. All right, I'm going to close and load to. Existing sheet, I'm going to put this dangerously below this one above. Click OK. All right, so using locale can be very handy, and converting ISO dates is also important. Now I'm going to save this Excel file. And before we go over to Power BI Desktop and look at our finale example, I actually want to go back into the query and see what happened when we told this column the locale is France. I'm going to double click this query. We can pick either one of the change type with locale. And up in the formula bar, there's the table.transform column types function. It has to have the previous step, which was a table. The second argument lists the column and the type. And then there's a third argument inside of table.transform column types. That's the code for the particular location or locale. Now, we don't need to worry about the code if we're simply going to use the user interface. But in our next example, we're going to have lots of different files from different countries. So part of the M code and the custom function we're going to create requires that we figure out what this code is. So I'm going to close Power Query. And on the sheet, local codes. Here's the link. This is also in the PDF notes. If you go to this Microsoft site, it lists language, location, and here's the code. And I copied this table and pasted it here. If we scroll down, here's the English United States. That's the code right there. Here's the code for France. And I went ahead and looked through this list and gathered up all the codes that we're going to need for our particular project. Over here, here's the 4 countries that we get text files from. Here's the code. So in our next example, since we have a folder with lots of different files from different countries, we're going to use this table and look up, using the merge feature, the correct locale code for each one of the text files as we import it. Now, before we go over to Power BI Desktop, let's go look at the files that we're going to try and import. One of the files you can download below the video is a zipped folder. Text files 12. So I'm going to double click. The start folder, double click. We're going to start Power Query pointing towards that folder, and it's going to import these files. Some are from France, some are from USA. Later, we'll add lots more files from France, USA, and from Poland. And we'll see that our solution will simply take all of these files and correctly interpret the dates and sales number. Now, if I double click and open one of these text files, you can see for France, day, month, year. And over here, there's the space for thousand separator and a comma for the decimal. Actually, we can go and look at one of the Polish files also. Actually, Bill Sizes sent me these from Poland. Here's the date. Here's the sales number. All right, so that's sitting on the desktop. So remember, Power BI Desktop is a free download. I went ahead and opened a new file and saved it. Now, before we get a single text file and build our custom function so that we can import any text file from one of our 4 countries, I do need that lookup table to find the correct country code for the locale. Now, we could import the table, but I got to show you a great feature here in Power BI Desktop. Enter data in the external data group. I simply click, and I can enter my countries and country codes here. I'm going to double click that column name. I called this country. Now, very importantly, in those file names, the country name is always in the file name. So we have to make sure that the lookup column, the first column that's going to give us our codes, has the country name as it's going to be in those files. So USA is the first one, tab. This column will be called locale code, and the code is little en-US, capital. Now I'm going to continue typing. Now I entered all of the records. These are the 4 possible countries we get files from. There's the code from that table we found online. Down here, we can name the table. I'm going to name it Lookup Locale Code. Now, this is kind of a cool feature over here in Power BI Desktop. We people from Excel just assume we have this spreadsheet and Excel tables. But this is a parallel feature over here in Power BI Desktop. Now, when I click OK, it's going to load it to the Power Query Editor. I very carefully want to come over here and right-click. I do not want to load this to the data model, so I'm going to uncheck Enable Load. This is just going to be a lookup table for us as we import text files. Now, I'm not going to click Close and Apply yet because we still need to build our custom function. That is a custom function that can interpret each text file that we import from a folder and get the right locale. So I'm going to import one text file and build a custom function. So new source here in the Power Query Editor, text. We want to select the first file from Poland. Double click. Come down and click OK. Now I happen to pick a file where it interpreted the dates correctly, but not the sales. It promoted headers and changed the type. Now, if I selected the French file, it would not have promoted headers, so I would have had to add that step. Those are the only 2 steps we're going to need. I want to come up to Advanced Editor. We're going to come up to Before Let and hit Enter, and we want to build our function. Open parentheses, and our 2 arguments in our function will be table input and locale code. Then I close parentheses, and the goto operator, equal sign, greater than. That means now down in this let code, we can put both of these variables. Now I'm going to double click table input, Control C, and inside of csv.document, I'm very carefully going to delete all this. This is the first argument of csv.document, Control V. Now, when we invoke this function, we will be asked to enter this variable. Well, for us, we'll have a whole folder with lots of text files, so that will be the input variable. But notice down here, table.transform column types. There's the previous table. There are the 2 columns we're going to have, but it didn't enter the 3rd argument. But no problem. Here in the advanced editor, I can come to the end, comma, space. And actually, I should have double-clicked, Control C, and that's where we'll put our locale code. Now, when I click Done here, this will no longer be a table query over here. It will be a function. I definitely want to come over here and rename this. Something smart like fx, get table with locale, and enter. Step 1, that's our lookup table. Step 2, that's our function. Now we can go to New Source, down to More. In Get Data, we can come over to Folder, double click. Folder, Browse. We want to very carefully on the desktop point to Start. Power Query is going to import everything from that Start folder. Click OK, click OK. We definitely want to edit. I'm going to name this over here. All files, correct date and numbers. Now, the first thing we want to do before we look up the correct code is I need to extract each one of the countries. Now, our file naming convention is always sales comes before the country name, followed by .txt. So I'm going to select this column, come up to Transform, over to Text Column, Extract. And we want text between delimiters. The start delimiter is going to be sales, tab, and then period will be our end delimiter. Now when I click OK, now we have a lookup value that we can use to look up and get the correct locale. And how do we do lookup? We can use merge. So I come over to Home, Merge Queries. Merge Queries, I don't want a new one. We're going to use the name column. This is our lookup value. The lookup table, and the first column of the lookup table, there it is. Now, left outer join is what we want because we don't have any German files or Polish files right now. So, of course, it will only find matching ones and bring them back. When I click OK, now I have all the way at the end a table. And if I look, it's looking up the entire 2 columns. I'm going to click the Expand button. I do not want to use original column names. I only want to check the locale code. And there it is. Later, when we import and have different country names, the correct code will appear here. Now I want to select Content. Hold Control, click Name. Scroll over, holding Control, click Locale. Right-click, remove other columns. Now we can add a column, and look at this. Invoke Custom Function. Now, Invoke Custom Function will be perfect because each one of these has a text file that we need to go and get and convert to a table. I'm going to call this new column Get Tables. And here's the function dropdown. f of x, get table with locale. Table input. Look at that. It already guessed the content. Locale. Well, I first have to say, please let me use a column name. And then the column name, there it is. So in that let statement that we created to convert one text file, now we have the input coming from the content column, and then the locale will come from this column. Click OK. And now, even though each one of these tables is from a different country, we have the correct dates and sales. Uh-oh, we have a problem. The sales are showing up as text. That means we probably made an error when we created our function. But no problem. I'm going to come over to the function, right-click, Advanced Editor. And as we look through our code, sure enough, type text is incorrect for sales. So I'm going to double-click text and type number. Now when I click Done, that function is fixed. And when I come back over here and select, look at that. Now we still have to append, so I'm going to select Get Tables, hold Control, select Name, right-click, remove other columns. Now I'm going to use the Expand. Both columns, uncheck, click OK. We have to finish this off. Date, data type, decimal, text is fine. Now I want to sort this. I'm going to sort this descending. All right, so we have a lookup table, our function, we have appended. Now we're going to close and apply. And this table will go to the data model. If we go over to the Data tab, we can see our table. Now we're going to go drop some new text files into our Start folder. I'm going to select the first one, hold Shift, select the last one. We have some new countries and a couple more files from France and USA. Control C, double click, Control V. Back over here, we're going to select refresh. And you got to be kidding me, look at that. It got the Poland file correct. That is absolutely amazing. Edit queries. Over here in Power Query and Power BI Desktop, we created a lookup table from scratch using enter data. Then we created a function, and then we used that function to make sure that each text file had the correct locale. And over here in Excel, we also saw that we can use using locale on individual columns for dates and numbers. All right, if you like that video, be sure to click that thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe, because there's always lots more videos to come from Excelisfun, including the next 3 videos will be our introduction to Power Pivot and DAX. All right, we'll see you next video.